And welcome to BDLL for the Europe edition on March 9th, 2019. What's going on, guys?
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. All right, can we get a quick sound check from the chat? Because, you know, I know you guys won't be surprised, but I broke something. Just saying. So, this week I lost my OBS settings for some reason. I don't know why. So the way I have my system set up, I have it set up to where I have all my data on a separate drive, and then I symlink to my folders that I need. So I have my OBS folder backed up on my data drive, and I just symlink it when I install an operating system. Unfortunately, when I went to open up OBS on this latest install, there was nothing there in the BDLL profile. So all of my other profiles were there. Like I had old Destination Linux profiles in there. I had my regular videos profile, Rocket League, and the BDLL one was not. It was just blank. There was nothing there. So I ended up having to go to my backup to try to restore it, and then I found out that I guess I've been backing it up all wrong. So I have my data drive and I've symlinked. So I back up my home folder so that I can get all of my other settings backed up. And the backup backs up a symlink and not the actual folder. So even on the backup, there was nothing there. So that tells you I need a new backup system. Just saying.
Easy done, Rocco. As I've said many, many times, a backup is only as good as a checked restore. And if you never do a test on the restores, your backups are worth squat.
Yep, pretty much.
But a very interesting point you raised, because I've also had a major issue with OBS. So I did a reinstall of PET 9 for my trucking, and I had OBS 21.03 on, I think. Of course, 23 is available. Very keen to try out the new NVENC codec. So I did the PPA for OBS, went into Synaptic, tried to install it, no, and it kept failing, and it was absolutely twisting my melon. And the error message it kept coming up with, you already have this library installed in 21, 23 can't override it. Anyway, the upshot is, if anybody suffers from this problem, the simple solution is to do a sudo apt remove lib obs 0. Press enter, put your password in, job done. 23 comes down beautiful.
Nice, very nice. Well, everybody, just so you know, this is the Europe edition, but everybody is welcome to join us. You don't have to be from Europe to join us. It's just at a more convenient time, hopefully, for the guys in Europe, so that they can join and not be half asleep. So hopefully this covers the mark. But we got Charlie here as well.
Hi there.
What's going on, brother? Welcome to BDLL.
Yeah, first time. This is amazing to be here. You know, it's like being on a TV show.
Not quite that popular, but you know.
Yeah, well, it's like that. You know, you watch it every week on the screen, and then suddenly you're here. It's like, wow. You know, I feel a bit starstruck actually.
That's cool.
All these people. You know.
No stars here, unfortunately, except EB. So,
too kind, Rocco, as always. Too kind.
And John, welcome.
Hello, I'm crashing from America.
That's okay. That's not crashing. That's just joining, brother.
Yeah, I tried to make the other night, but I was late, so I thought I'd try to make this one.
Yeah, we were in the post show, and John showed up like right as we were ending it. All right, so we didn't have any distro challenge this past week on the regular BDLL, so we pretty much have an open forum today. We did try out Bitwarden, so if any of you guys want to share your thoughts on Bitwarden, you may go right ahead.
Anybody else got anything to say? No?
Do it
in order, or you just jump in? And
well, I mean, I would go in order normally, but
yeah.
I don't know how many people actually have done it. So instead of putting people on the spot and saying, did you do it? No. Did you do it? No. You know, whatever. If you want to talk about Bitwarden, go ahead, Charlie.
Well, I've been using it now for about 3 months. So the transition, I was on LastPass, but I was always getting a bit nervous about LastPass since they were taken over by LogMeIn. And I was looking for an alternative, but there really wasn't one quite the same. And then suddenly this Bitwarden appeared, so I started with that, and it's great. I found it to be a lot more easy than LastPass. It works straight out of the box. You know, LastPass is a bit of a warren, it seems, with the settings. You know, you have to keep diving down. It's not very intuitive, I found, and lots of functionality probably I missed because I wasn't willing to sort of keep diving in and spending the time. But Bitwarden was really simple. It was given an audit in November by what is considered to be a good company, Cure 53, I think they're called, something like that. They discovered a flaw in some Korean software, which sort of made their name. And they found a few problems, but that was all fixed. And so now I think it's the safest place. You know, it's great. You've got the password checker. If you click on it, it will check if your password has been used somewhere else, if it's been compromised, that particular password. It does the auto-filling. It'll clear the clipboard after a certain set time, which I know that LastPass does that as well, but it made it very simple. You know, you can, if the company starts taking a wrong path, you can host it yourself, which is quite handy. And of course, it's free of charge, totally free. I mean, I paid it's only €10 to go onto the premium. I've not really seen anything extra. I know there's certain functionality like sharing your passwords, but I don't need that. Right. So, but I just paid the €10 because I felt, you know, if we're you have to support the devs and you don't want it to disappear. So if ever just use it free, maybe it'll just suddenly go into decline. I don't know. So I did that. Now the transition, they always talk how easy it is to transition from LastPass to this, but it is a bit of a chore. If you use notes with your logins, that's the problem. If you don't have notes, then it seems to be a smooth process. But I have lots of logins, like, for example, you know, when you've got the questions, what's your father's name? So I don't use, like most people, I suppose, I don't use his real name. I put something down like Gertrude or Chicken or something. But then, of course, I need to remember that. So I put that into the LastPass. But when you try and save that, then it doesn't import easily into Bitwarden. So you've got to delete all those little files and then it goes in smoothly. But it's great. Yeah, I love Bitwarden. Now, I could never use it as a notepad. I just keep all my passport details and general notes, general information there. But to use it actually as a notepad would be a little bit, it's a bit too complicated.
I tried this week to use it because that's originally what we were going to do, like a notes program, and I tried to use it as a notes thing, and it doesn't turn me on for that. It's to me, it's not meant for that. I mean, it's a great option to have, but it's not going to replace a note application. So, but that's funny you say that about the easy transition, because that's what you hear most times, and I don't think anybody's brought up the fact of having notes in there for the transition. So maybe that's something they need to work on.
The actual secure notes work okay, I believe. I didn't have any. I just copied and pasted mine. But if you attach a note to the actual login, so you know you put down those little questions, answer those little questions, and put them in, then it appears. Well, it's just part of the CSV file. It just basically mixes it up, and you have to go through and remove them. So, but I mean, it's worth it in the end. You know, it's worth the time because I find it to be just so much easier than using the LastPass. It's been so much quicker, faster, easier. I mean, I can log in within a few seconds. It uses the code. You know, on my phone, I use Authy, so I can just keep the code there.
Right. Well, I'm able to use the fingerprint reader on the phone, so that's a good part of the security process as well. So it's got so many features that, you know, Michael Tennell is actually the one who started talking about it when I switched over, I don't know, months ago. And I love it. I wouldn't be without it. So
it seems it gets a lot of press on Hacker News as well. So if that means anything to somebody,
Anybody else?
I used that. So I've used Bitwarden a little bit before the challenge started. I heard about, I think Wimpy and Sean Davis were talking about it somewhere. And so I use KeePass and Bitwarden and combined doing what they do, they're awesome. They're the best password management system that I've discovered. And the fact that I do have a little bit of a issue, like, so standard, talking about notes. So I use standard notes for note taking, and the autofill stuff from Bitwarden doesn't automatically fill. So you have to do the copy paste, which sometimes I get a little questionable about putting my password in the copy field, but it's incredible. The note taking, there's a little bit, it doesn't compare to standard notes, I don't think at all, but I think it's the best password management system I've discovered.
Yep, I agree. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've used it for a little while. I've been using it for about a month. I've tried LastPass, and I moved from LastPass to NPass, and then I've moved from NPass to Bitwarden. Mainly because I fancied trying the Brave browser, and there wasn't an NPass extension built in for it, but there is a Bitwarden one. I haven't installed the Brave browser yet, but I started using it, and from what was said before about when you pay the €10, I think you can't use TOTP passwords or YubiKeys or anything like that unless you pay the €10, which I haven't done yet. And if you don't want to do that, then you can use Google Authenticator, you can use Authy and things like that. And there was the shared passwords as well. You can share, I think you can share your passwords with one sort of other user, because I've done it in case I get myself locked out of something. I've done it with my wife, but you can pick which passwords you share, which I think is quite nice, rather than just saying here's access to every single thing just because I added you to the group. So
Are you sure you can trust her?
No, but so she's got very limited access to what she can get. But then I like the idea of self-hosting it, because I run a couple of Raspberry Pis as servers here, as media servers and things, just because they're so cheap to leave on 24 hours a day. So I thought, it'd be really good to do that, because it can't use much bandwidth just to log in and get your passwords. And in order to do it, you have to download their Docker image, and their Docker image will only run on x86 64 hardware. It won't work on ARM HF. So I haven't been able to do anything with that, which is quite annoying, because things that are a bit heavier, like Nextcloud and other bigger projects, they will run on Raspberry Pi. So I hope in the future they'll build a Docker image that can run on ARM HF, because I can't justify running a full server 24/7.
Right.
Whereas, £7 a year is fine, but 20 odd pound extra a month is it's quite a big expense just to save your passwords. But other than that, and like Charlie said, I read through the the inspection that they'd had, and it all seemed pretty good. They tested things like how was it saving your password as it was transferring it to the browser and then to the system, and making sure it wasn't plain text or anything like that, which I quite liked. I have installed the standalone, because they have a standalone desktop version rather than just the extension. So I tried that. I haven't got it on my current machine, but that's quite nice as well for putting extra things in. But one of the downsides that I found with some password managers was I really missed having the extensions. So when KeePass first came out, the fact that you had to load that up to get your password and transfer from one screen to another is just a huge pain. So I do like having the extensions and everything, and it's one of the few that will actually work with my work computer as well, which is very locked down. So it's quite nice.
Do either of you guys have a link for that test? Because I didn't get to read that. I would love to.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look for it now.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in?
Not really. I've not used it. I like the fact that it's available across multiple mobile platforms and PC platforms. personally, I've never had a problem. I've never been hacked to the best of my knowledge. Create all my own passwords, store them all in my memory. I don't like the idea of a third party randomly generating passwords for me personally, and I'll tell you why. Because then I become 100% reliable on that third party app and that third party, and B, over time I use the ability to create my own passwords, complex ones. Now, the challenge for me as I'm getting older and as dementia kicks in, along with just general thickness, of course, is that I can remember all the passwords. What I can't remember is what password I've used on what account. So it might take me 20 times, but I do get it eventually. That's just my 2 cents there.
Well,
but it does look like a very cool app, I have to say.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, though, because you are really somewhat trusting a third party for your passwords, but I just can't imagine. I have so many passwords, it's ridiculous. I can't imagine writing them down or keeping them in my head or anything like that. So
yeah, no, but you have to bear in mind, Rocco, I did it for years as a Windows sysadmin, and one of my biggest bugbears of all time was doing a really lovely complex password for a user, for them to write it on a lovely yellow sticky post-it note and whack it on the monitor for everybody to see. So there's your security through the roof.
You're not supposed to put them on the monitor.
Yeah, no, but I mean, inevitably people in the company do, because they're lazy. So yeah, I started off with a simple way of coming up with a easy rememberable complex password, and developed it over the years, and I just find it really easy now to do an instant complex password and remember it. I just do.
EB, one question. What is that complex password? If it is a couple of words, it's not complex at all. Also, many people, including me, like to say that a password that can be remembered can be hacked.
Yes, but a random password stored in a third-party app, the app can be hacked. Anything.
Yeah, but
it's that simple.
When you have like hundreds of passwords, like me, that I have for every server, you kind of have to have some sort of system to store it in. And when they are like 30 characters, random characters, you can't really remember them.
Yeah, and it's not really the amount of characters. That's such a big misnomer. It's the complexity and the makeup of the password. So the first simple golden rule: don't use a dictionary word as your password. That's simple.
Yeah, that's true. First rule you should remember is that when you have like I do it as how my company set the rules. I have to have at least 30 characters, all random, can't be repeat. 2 characters can't repeat, must have small letters, large letters, numbers, and special characters. I have to have all in a 30 plus character password.
And that's how does this apply just to you or to other members of your company? Because if you're doing 30 character really complex passwords, I'd love to see a data entry clerk try and remember them.
It's only for me. Only I have that password. Each admin has its own set of passwords, and each password must be that size. And believe me, it takes a hell of a long time to log in.
But you're saying that admins have to have that complexity, but not everyone.
Yeah, we're IT companies, so we all of us are admins.
Oh,
but
one of the things I've found is that, I hate to say it because I'm an admin, but sometimes admins are the least secure people because there are so many different things you have to log into, and it is a little bit of a misnomer. I think we kind of do some bad things, and when you have 40 different accounts that you have to have a password for, and they all have to be complex, it becomes you have to have a manager, or it's just completely unsafe.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
I disagree
true,
with you
but
all, hey,
at the end of things, I have to do it how my company does it.
Well, let me ask you this: you said EB that not using a dictionary word or whatever is the first golden rule. What are the best practices for creating passwords on your own?
Very, very simple. Take a well-known phrase to yourself, right? Let's say you want to use 10 letters for argument's sake out of that phrase. So you select your 10 letters. Okay, so there's your password. So now how do you secure it? Well, the first thing to do is to change some of those letters to capitals. Very simple. The second thing to do is to change some of those letters to numbers. So an E becomes a 3, an A becomes a 4, etc., etc.
That's really, really not secure, because every program that does password cracking has rules for 3 equals E and 3 E equals 3. That's like a first part of the rule set. A is 1, A is 2. Basically, exchange.
I'm just giving you a basic example, because otherwise I'm going to tell everybody my passwords and how I do it, and I'm going to be hacked overnight.
Yeah.
That's all.
You don't want to do that?
No? A base start, that's all. And all I can tell you is, using my method, I've never been actively hacked or successfully hacked in over 30 years of doing passwords. I can only share my experience with you.
How often do you change them though, EB? Because that's a big part of, I think, people don't. They come up with that secure password, right? And
that's the biggest mistake you can make. I usually change mine every 28 days, but I'm smart. What I usually do is reverse characters, letters, numbers, or symbols. So I've got the same password, but it's completely different.
Gotcha.
And best practice, I always used to do it every 28 days. But as I say, I've never been hacked yet. It doesn't mean to say I won't be, but I've never been beat by an app yet. So
right. No, and I think Big Pod's point about the dictionary cracking, brute force cracking, that's really, I'm never worried that someone's going to guess my actual passphrase, because it's so obscure that no one, right? It's
the way I always look at it is this: it's very simple, right? If somebody sitting in the bedroom at the age of 13 can hack into the CIA or MI5, if they want your data, they're going to get it. Don't you worry about that.
It's like a car alarm, right? If they want to get in your car, they're going to get your car.
But what I am saying, and where I do agree with you all, and certainly from the app point of view, somebody who has many accounts, many logins, and perhaps has a poor memory or an inability to remember phrases to generate passwords themselves, then yeah, the app's a great solution. But just for me personally, I don't trust a third. I may as well use Google. I may as well store all my data in Google then. That's really, all right, it's a bit of a bad, but that's where I'm coming from. I'd rather trust myself than I'd rather give all my passwords to Rocco than to KeyPass or something else. Because quite frankly, I trust Rocco more than a third-party app who I have no idea who they are.
Do you think self-hosting mitigates any of that concern?
I do, providing the self-hosting is well-maintained and admin. Unfortunately, in the real world, very few home systems are. Some are,
yeah.
The majority are not.
I think the day that they hack, if you can call it that, LastPass and Bitwarden, there'll be a lot of heart attacks happening in that split second that the news has announced.
LastPass was hacked multiple times, but as far as data is, as far as people said, no one can crack the databases because they're so encrypted. Basically, no one who is the state actor with so much supercomputers, no one like that can crack it, because each user has its own database which is encrypted with its own key, and no one actually knows how the encryption actually looks besides LastPass. That's why, as far as no one has cracked it that isn't a state actor, which we don't know if some state actor did, like some government. But otherwise, people like a random guy in his mom's basement, that guy probably won't, because it requires so much computational power.
Okay, so here's a quick food for thought for you. Let's say I am using this beautiful Bitwarden app, and I suddenly become of serious interest to either the FBI, the CIA, or whatever agency. What do you reckon the chances are of them getting hold of the data they want without any of his lot knowing about it publicly? What's the chances of that?
It is a chance, but for you, they can just ask. They can because you're English and you live in England.
Yeah, either that or Rocco could just turn up and waterboard me for the afternoon, and they've got my information. I mean,
yeah,
ways and means, isn't there?
Yeah, they can, but reality is state actors will get in anyway, even if they don't really ask you for a password, because they have so much computational power, they can brute force through anything.
So this is what I say. I think it's a great app. I think it's a super idea and fabulous for certain people. But just for me personally, it's not for me. That's all.
And that's why there are choices, right? I mean, that's the whole point.
Yep.
But couldn't somebody fish it? You know, they could create a little pretend one. You enter your details, they enter it. It jumps to the code. You enter the code, they enter the code, and now they have access. I mean, that's always been fear. I won't put in my email address, my email password into it, because that's like the keys to the kingdom. But I've always you could create a false app and then in some way get access that way to sort of fish my account.
Catch is they have to get that false app onto your system, which is a lot harder for someone to do, because they have to have either access through the internet via SSH or RDP if it's on Windows, or they have to have direct access to your computer, where in reality, if they have direct access to your computer, you're a lot more screwed than that they're getting all your passwords. Basically, they can get everything.
Well, this is one of those touchy subjects where everybody has their opinions on it.
Security is really a touchy subject.
I think that there are certain compromises we all make. You know, passwords are one thing, but there are compromises we all make in security for ease of use. And I think if you do it the right way, I think Bitwarden is a perfectly good way to go if you do it the right way. Although I can't fault you, EB, for not wanting to put passwords anywhere. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Rocco, it's horses for courses. I have no problem with anybody on this planet using a password manager. I totally understand it, get it, appreciate it, and respect it. All I was trying to say from my point, you know, sometimes I think we can overcomplicate our own lives unnecessarily. I think if we take reasonable best practice as a starting point, you won't go far wrong. And that's just what I feel.
Well, I think here's a good opinion on this too. So my wife still uses LastPass, which I had used, and now I'm using Bitwarden. She does not use it for anything related to finances or healthcare or anything that's like a real sensitive subject. So she'll use it for random, you know, she does graphic design, so she has to have passwords for stock photography or, you know, stuff that it really doesn't matter if they get in. What are they going to do, right? So. But it's also, she doesn't want to have to remember, either reuse the same password or remember 100 different passwords. So for her, that's a perfect solution. If someone were to crack into it, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. All of her really important things, like her banking and her investments and all of that, is she keeps that separate on her own. And, you know, so she has a reasonable level of distrust for the technology, which I think is safe and smart, but she also sees the advantage of using it as a tool for those sites that it isn't that big of a deal. So I think that's a good compromise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you've hit it. I think the biggest thing we can ever do is trust anybody. So to give you an example, you trust a bank. You give them all your details. They give you some details back. So what do the hackers and the criminals and the crooks do? They hack the data out of the bank's database. Nobody knows about it. Now, they get your credit card number, they get your name, they get the expiry date. What are they missing? The 3-digit security code on the back. So they randomly ring people up and say, hi, this is so-and-so, blah-de-blah-de-blah at your local bank. This is just a security check. We may have had a data breach. We don't want any secure information off you whatsoever. All we'd like you to do is just verify the security code on the back of your credit card, please. And 99 out of 100 people will go, okay, that's it, they're done, they're away. Next thing you got Amazon bill.
It's funny you mentioned that because I don't put my bank password into Bitwarden or anything else. I never have. But I recently changed my email, and I was pretty shocked at how easy it was to change your email at certain places.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a big security risk. Now, some websites, some financial institutions will, make it difficult. Like they'll ask you your questions that you put in, or they'll do two-factor authentication or something like that. But too many places I went to just said, here, change your email. And I changed it. I got the verification link at the new email, and bang, I was done. And that is, to me, is really bad.
Well, and that just shows that in general, even large corporations that you would expect to have the simplest security structures in place, in a lot of cases, it's shocking how bad they are at, the covering the basics. And so to EB's point, like, I don't know if any of you have signed up for it. I use the Have I Been Pwned service, where you just put in an email address and then it'll tell you whenever a new breach comes up that you were part of a paste somewhere, or you were part of a database hack.
Yep.
And I just got another one the other day. It's like every week I get another one where, 600,000 or 500 million, or it's unbelievable how frequent it happens. And so to EB's point, we can do our best to contain this information, to secure this information, but the companies that have our information, we trust them to do the same, and in some cases, unfortunately, they don't do that.
The classic example in the UK here was the NHS. I mean, they had a massive data breach, lost so many millions of people's records. Why? Because they were using unpatched Windows XP. Windows
XP is general security risk.
So it happens, people. But I always think if you follow best practice and take all the reasonable steps you can take. Look, if you've got a car, if before you leave that vehicle, you make sure you've locked it, it's in a fairly well-lit place, in a fairly secure place, you have reasonably done all you can. If some chab then comes along with a tow truck, hoists it and ships it off to Japan, at least you can say, well, I did as much as I could, other than attaching a bomb to the car so it blew up when they tried to thieve it. All I'm saying is you need to take reasonable precautions. Once you've done that, you're as safe as you can possibly or reasonably expect to be.
I wanted to say something about, Eric mentioned about his wife using only certain things. I think one of the things, even, I don't like LastPass, but Bitwarden LastPass are so much better than using Firefox or Chrome's password manager.
Yeah.
And so many people just go, yes, yes, yes. And that's probably the worst thing in the world you can do. So just if you use this just to store the crappy website for catphotos.com or whatever you go to, is so much better.
What's wrong with catphotos.com?
I don't even want to Google it because I don't even know where.
I agree. I do what EB said. I will only write certain things down because then no one's ever going to get to see them, so things like that, I definitely won't want anyone seeing that, so I'm going to keep that really safe and it stays here in my
How do you know my master password?
I know, so that's my master password. I just make sure that's the one I've got to make sure I keep that one safe.
Yeah, but Armour, you need to write it in slightly bigger letters, buddy, and then blue tack it to that bookcase behind you. So, you know what I mean? That's what you do.
I'm going to just get a roller and just paint it across the wall, just saying, this is my password. Then I won't forget.
Well, maybe you should put it on your front door, so that way when you come home, you can remember your password.
Silent is here.
Good evening, folks. How are we doing?
Awesome.
I hope you chub out.
I'm very good, thanks.
You're going to weigh in on this password situation, Silent?
Yeah, just do it in binary.
Sure.
He's such a chub.
It's easy. Why complicate life?
Right, I know. Why complicate things?
Duh.
Hey, Rocco, can I go back to
Bitwarden,
Pass?
I put all my stuff in there. Credit cards, everything in LastPass. Yeah, I trust them totally. Maybe I shouldn't, but
Yeah, I don't know if you should trust them with every. I really feel like hesitant
'cause all I
about
did-
doing certain things with it.
I pulled the
You can use a
CVS out of
safe
LastPass and put it in Bitwarden. And it all works. It's all there.
Yeah, okay. Just another simple analogy, which may or may not be relevant. Here in the UK, we had a spate of super secure cars being thieved and shipped abroad. And do you know how they did it? It's very simple. They took a tennis ball, cut the tennis ball in half, placed it over the outside door lock on the vehicle, banged it, and all the things come. You're in. Technology, you got to love it.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I really feel hesitant about doing certain things. Like, I know that you can put your passwords in and you can put your credit card numbers in, and maybe it's just as important as a password is just as important as a credit card number, but I really am, like I said, hesitant about putting credit card numbers in there or not. So,
I mean, on one thing I was reading when I was looking it up through Bitwarden the other day, and Zeb had said about using a YubiKey. When you go on their website, they actually LastPass didn't do this, but Bitwarden heavily emphasised that they think you should have two-factor authentication for your master password, which I thought was quite a good thing to see, because normally they just say, oh, you only need one master password and everything's great. And I thought, oh, it's nice that they're pushing that. I think it was on their front page. It said, we definitely recommend that you use two-factor authentication where you can.
Yeah, absolutely. If
also
anybody
does
wants
that.
a free YubiKey, just contact Zeb because he's got one going.
I know LastPass does. Every time I log in on the website, they say you should set a two-factor authentication, because I lost my old phone. I had to delete all two factors. I still haven't set it up back up.
just so you know, I'm having issues with Zoom for some reason. I don't know if it's the connection or what, where Zoom is periodically freezing. So I'm not sure if it's our connection to Zoom or my connection or what. But
Your audio is good, but your camera is frozen.
yeah, well, it's because I'm on Arch. Did I say that? No.
Oh,
Probably not.
No, it's probably not because I'm on Arch, but I think it's more of a connection issue than anything. But just so you know, in the chat, I do realize it. I just can't do anything about it. So, Frank, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so there was you were talking about Zeb just a second ago, and I think he was, obviously he had some issues with the YubiKey, but he was talking about he had gotten locked out of his Google account a couple days ago. And it took him, I think, 4 days for them to authenticate that he was actually him and let him back in. And you made a point about how easy it is to change your password other places and just go, hey, I'm Joe at the bank and so I can just have somebody change all this stuff to go in there. And I think it's kind of fascinating where we kind of yell at Google for a lot of things, but they're not that terrible when it comes to some of their security stuff. They actually do some authentication, and it's something what EB said. I know it from a fact. Like, I've gotten letters from the government that my veteran information has been stolen. Equifax sends me all this good stuff, but everything I've had has been stolen. So a lot of our personal data is already out there.
Yep.
And I mean, I have a government security clearance, and OPS, which is Office of Personnel Management, had a huge hack where they lost all the data. So just imagine the data that's in a U.S. government security clearance. And all that data is just out there. And I was one of the people, there's several million. So it's kind of what you can only secure certain things. And other things you just have to kind of go, okay, I can only control what I can control and not get too down the rabbit hole, because otherwise you wouldn't be talking on Zoom. You'd be in a bunker somewhere.
Yep.
With a tinfoil hat on. So
again, it comes down to choices. And
well, the idea
that drive a car, would you, if you have to follow everything correctly, you wouldn't drive a car, because statistic of the chance of having an accident is much higher than you being hacked. So we take our chance. We drive a car. You know the risks.
No, that's a great shout, and I'll tell you why. Because within 3 months of driverless autonomous cars coming in across the planet, Rocco will sit there and say, "Gentlemen, ladies, what are we going to talk about today?" And some bright spark will say, "Do you remember when we used to let real people get behind a wheel of a car? How insane was that?"
Yep.
I think Frank's point about the idea that our information is out there, and I know this is such a goofy way to say it, the dark web, or however you want to say it. Like, the people who want that information can get that information. So the thing that I like to see now is that things like financial institutions, or the idea of two-factor authentication, some way of prompting me to say, did you just try to either change something or log in? Or I like that Bitwarden sends me an email whenever there's a new login from somewhere that maybe it doesn't recognize. Anything that's proactive, I like that, because I like to see, when something like that happens. And that's sort of the difference between, I don't live in naive, fairyland of I'm somehow going to keep myself safe and I'm not a part of this world. But I do like the idea that there are ways to mitigate that. Maybe not perfect ways, but
it's the same type of scenario with a VPN. Obviously everywhere you go on the internet, you're being tracked, and your ISP and everything else. And the only thing you can really do is, there's many things you can do, but you have to make the same kind of choices, whether you use a VPN, whether you don't. It's not 100% foolproof. It's not 100% safe. If they really want your data, they can get it. But you just do the best you can with it.
But that's a great shout, Rocco. That's a fantastic shout, because you've just nailed it. So in the UK, as of next month, the government have taken the steps to block all pornographic websites for younger children. How they're going to do that, I don't know. But basically, by taking that move and carte blanche blocking pornography, period, in the UK, all it's going to do is see sales of VPNs go through the roof, and the kids are that bright, they'll just go straight on the dark web and get the porn.
I think what they'll do.
I think the key there is choice, having the choice and being informed, and best practice. If you follow enough best practice steps, you have reasonably done. Because let's be honest, you can have the greatest pornographic blocking facility in the world, and your son or daughter goes 3 doors down the road to a guy who's really, really good on the dark web, and they've got the porn.
Well, think of it like this too. It's also it creates a security risk for those people that want to access those kinds of content, because what we have now, even though I know this is kind of getting out into an edge case of NSFW, but at least if we talk about the companies on the top, like Pornhub, they're really involved in tech and in the internet and open web type things. And it's kind of like with drugs, wherein you create black markets where now there's no legitimate use case for this stuff, but people still want it. And if they want it, they're going to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way they're going to do it in the UK, they're going to block carte blanche all access to any pornographic website from the UK.
So what happens now when you have to go to the dark web and seedy places like it used to be on like IRC when you shared things?
But here's the twist, Scrap. What they're going to do is they're going to make you verify yourself with a credit card.
I'm sure a lot of people will.
Then you can get. So really, how many 14, 15-year-olds are not capable of slipping the parents' credit card to get the details? Really?
I don't know if they'll make you. Will they make you? Will they make you phone up though? I mean, will they make you phone your provider and say, "Please, because how many people are going to go? Excuse, like someone answers the phone and goes, please let me have porn."
Yeah, not going to happen. But like I say, if they do it via a credit card only, to me, they should do it via some reasonable form of security, like a passport or an ID card or a driving license. But a credit card, I mean, credit card is not proof, verifiable proof it's you, is it? That's ridiculous.
All right, moving on to the next topic.
Right.
Rocco, your image is frozen.
Actually, I had a quick comment about the YubiKey. I'm trying to remember the name of the other device, but there is a completely open source two-factor authentication device. It, I think, just came out, and I think they're releasing an NFC version in June, maybe. But I cannot remember the name. I just wanted to mention that out there because I know some people are really passionate about open source stuff.
Dan, how do you manage your passwords?
Multiple different ways, actually. I've been a LastPass user for a while, so I used some of that. Also have KeyPass. We use KeyPass at work. That's kind of our chosen thing. And I did install Bitwarden. I've been using that all week long. And so I've got all three different platforms. I don't have everything in any one of them. So maybe that's the way to go, is you have multiple and you can spread it around a little bit. And
that would definitely go ahead.
Yeah. And there's some that I just I just know and I don't have anywhere. So they're just in my head. So I guess I've got some of everything.
Here's one argument that I have against not having some record of your passwords. So my wife, I had a very near brush with death with some illness and things not that long ago. And it occurred to me, she wouldn't know how to get into anything of mine. Now, she has a right of survivorship and she can prove that she's my spouse. But like you were saying about Zeb taking 4 days to get into an account, what if she needed to get into some of my accounts and didn't know how? So what she does have is my master password to Bitwarden.
Yep.
And she can get in and get to my information. And that's just a side use case, but it's something important to think about. You know, EB, you know, you've got your system and everybody's kind of got their systems for passwords. And if you don't share those with the people that it makes sense to, you know, they're never going to get into that stuff. So,
but again, Eric, it comes down to trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's just that little magic word, trust. I mean, I could share all my passwords with my wife, which I would do anyway. But then I could run into a 19-year-old Swedish blonde, have a mid-50s crisis. Suddenly my wife hates me and thinks, oh, we'll have a bit of your bank balance, Sonny Jim. Like, it's just about trust, that's all it is. Who do you trust? What do you trust?
Right. Yeah. And so then ultimately some of our passwords at work, we actually write them down and put them in a safe. They don't see the light of day unless you really, really needed it. And
that's actually a really, really cool point. It would be interesting to split your master password into 3 and give it to 3 separate trusted sources. So in the event of your death, you need all 3 pieces to complete access.
Like
that's reasonable practice.
And they're all fighting over all of your money, EB.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately, I don't have any. So
all £5 of it,
Rock. John, how do you manage your passwords, dude?
Well, I do IT for a living, so like English Bob said, I do not trust putting any of my passwords, you know, anywhere other than my head. I'm also I pick a favorite saying, I sort of apply it to the situation. And as far as I know, none of my systems have ever been hacked, but you know, I don't write them down. I mean, the worst part of security is people. I mean, that's always the easiest way to break a security system is to go through people. I mean, I can randomly call people that I work with and pretend like I'm Joe from AT&T. I'm checking line security or whatever. And within 2 or 3 people, I have somebody's password and I'm in the system. So
yeah, social engineering is the biggest killer of passwords anyway. But just to put it into simple English, all you guys and girls that use KeyPass or use Bitwarden, great, nice apps, no problem. Would you give all your personal information to John for safekeeping?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Well, that's essentially what you're doing with passing it to an application.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you don't know Bitwarden any better than you know. Exactly. You probably know John better than you know Bitwarden, and yet everybody's happy to just farm the data over to some entity they don't know.
Well, what's the difference with passwords or VPN? You're trusting a third party at the end of the day.
You've just nailed it, Silent. Trust. It's that little word again. Trust.
Yep.
That's
And
all it is.
it's the choices you make. And you say about a third party. It is a third party, and the only thing that you can do, is research and do the best you can at that research to find out who are the good sources of whatever it be, password managers or VPNs, and then again, you still have to trust them.
I would give it to.
It almost makes the whole argument moot. Your ISP has the biggest profile on you anyway. Your ISP sees all of your traffic, irrespective of what you're using.
Right.
I question what are you sharing with these password managers? Because when I don't know about Bitwarden, but when I was looking into NPass, which unfortunately is closed source, you're not sharing your password with them, you're sharing a hash with them, and it is locally decrypted. So they're not decrypting it on their end and then sending the encrypted password. They get a complete hash that's salted, so they can never ever decrypt your password. It has to go onto your machine with your file. If you lose your database, that's it. It's not saved anywhere. So you have to have it on there. It decrypts it on your local machine. It sticks it into your browser, and then it deletes it afterwards. Which surely that's different to the only security risk there is once it's on your screen, having been typed in. But surely there's a bigger risk then of you manually typing it in, because if someone's managed to get access to your machine and put a keylogger on your machine, they have full access. So you're no longer having to type in your password at all.
Arnie, you mean like Microsoft do with Windows 10 out of the box?
Like Windows 10.
I don't know. I don't run Windows 10.
LastPass and Bitwarden also send you a encrypted copy or encrypted password. They don't actually decrypt it on their site. They send you a encrypted password. You decrypt it with your master password, and they put it into a browser, and then it goes away.
So here's the question:
They don't ever see their actual password.
Arnold's talking about like a keylogger. If it's automatically in, like Bitwarden and LastPass, then there's no keylogger involved. I think that's what he's saying. It's a bit of security.
Yeah, but I disagree with you, because if you're on Windows 10, okay, and you install Bitwarden, I assume you need a username or email and a password to log into Bitwarden. Correct or wrong?
You do.
Right. Yeah. So in that instance, Microsoft has already keylogged your login information to Bitwarden. You haven't got access to the passwords, but
you don't have to though.
You could. You've done anything.
But if you pay for the €10 thing, you can log in with a YubiKey, or you can log in with.
It's a two-factor authentication. YubiKey is a two-factor authentication,
which they recommend you do anyway. So you'd have your authenticator in your hand. So even if they do copy or keylog your master password, they haven't got your phone, they haven't got the Google Authenticator or whatever you choose to use with you. So is that not safer? I mean, also, as far as I'm aware, they aren't. I mean, you'd say using it on Windows, fair enough, but let's not forget Microsoft already helpfully, when you're setting up Windows 10, send your login details to your own Microsoft email address that you didn't ask them to set up. And,
that's on
that anyway.
That's on Bitwarden then, isn't it? Why offer a level of service that doesn't require a YubiKey?
Yeah, that is true. But I haven't set one up because I'm too scared, because I'm so useless that I would lose either my phone and forget to back up any of the keys I had, or lose my YubiKey and then that's it's sort of screwed. So I'm really hesitant to actually do it, but I also really want to do it. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. But like we were saying before, I don't have any banking stuff on there. I don't have anything that I wouldn't be upset if anyone got to. They just get into different logins for things that don't really matter. Anything that really matters and would affect my life horrifically, I know those either in my head or I have them secured at home. And unless that person's going to come into my house and know exactly where it's hidden, like this, then I should be perfectly safe. I'm not going to go put writing on the walls like, by the way, it's in the whatever drawer, or it's in here. Look in here if you want to find it. I'm not stupid enough to label a file with "this is all my passwords. Please don't open it." You may, it's safe in that way. I agree. It's what you decide to share, and I wouldn't share certain things. Although what I have done in the past is I've put clues to remind myself what the password is. Like I might say, oh, it's the same as what you use on your server, or it's the same as here, and I won't have that password anywhere on any of my password managers. It will be the one or two that I know that I can remember.
So you talked about trust, and I think it's one of the biggest things with open source and passwords and security is you can audit that code and actually have an idea of what's going on. Where if you have a closed source security or password system, you have no idea what's going on. And maybe I don't understand the complete code, but there's 1,000 guys out there that are looking at it, and they're going to post it on Reddit or somewhere else. Red flag, we saw this big thing. And I think that security and open source and trust kind of go hand in hand and are the best. And it's policy.
You have to trust people when it comes to open source, just as much as when it comes to closed source.
That's the
if you
reason
don't trust people, you should learn to program and only use open source that you can read. But otherwise, it's always, you have to always trust people, whether it's with your data or just that they're telling the truth.
The fact that it's open source is why I left MPass, because it's not, and LastPass as well. Especially when I left LastPass when LogMeIn bought them, and Bitwarden being open source. There's not many that you can choose from really that offer the features. KeyPass does not offer the same features as Bitwarden. It just doesn't. I've never found it works as well. I always have to have one or two screens open, and I never found the Android or iOS apps to be anywhere near as good.
What about Authy? Is that open source or is that closed source proprietary? I think a lot of people use Authy, don't they?
That is
AUTHY Authy.
I believe a closed source program. Well, how often? Okay, I know like some of you have already said that, but how often do you guys change your passwords? To different
every
sites?
century.
Every 28 days.
Every 30 days.
If I did it every 28 days, it would take me 28 days, and then it would be like that painting the seven bridge. You'd get to the end of it, and you have to start again, and you'd never be finished. There'd be that many passwords to change.
No, I
totally
disagree.
agree.
I totally disagree, and I'll tell you why. That's like saying, how often do you have a shave? Oh, why?
It's been a little while.
Once a week. Well, you should have one every day.
If
I had to do it every day, I'd go.
A report to say that it wasn't necessary. That all this changing the password actually made it weaker. I can't remember the report now. I'd have to look online, but they said it was actually weakening your security by changing it.
Most people only add an extra character to their existing.
Yeah, I mean, look, okay, I'll come clean. My latest password is Chab, CHAB. Now look, I've just replaced the B for an 8. So it's super secure, right? You know, I mean, I don't know what your problem is. Just every 28 days. Next, I'm going to change the A for a 4. All right, so.
I bet you have a password with Chab in it. Come on, you must do.
You're very close. I don't, but you're very close. You'd be shocked at some of my passwords. You'd be like, really? And most of them revolve around the mother-in-law. There you go, because it's there and it's disliked, isn't it? You know, so.
Well, I don't change my passwords near often enough, but it's almost like you said, Army. I mean, by the time I have so many passwords, by the time I wouldn't even be done finishing my passwords before I had to start changing them again. So, I mean, that to me is completely out of the question. I mean, every so often is great, but to do it on a regiment, I don't think I could, to be honest with you. I don't want to spend that much time doing it.
LastPass, there was a facility for it to automatically change a password, which I did use a few times, but I've not found that in Bitwarden.
Yeah, that's actually. Yeah, it doesn't have. You're right, and that is something that someone in the Telegram group brought up this week to discuss on the show, was that LastPass does support. So if you can tell it when the password will expire, and so then it will remind you to change it. And you're saying that it can do it automatically. I don't know that I'd like that.
LastPass does it automatically if you set it up that way. Yeah.
So Bitwarden, there's been several requests on their forums and elsewhere to add that kind of functionality, but they haven't yet. So if that's something that's important to you, then know that about Bitwarden.
Yep.
And in terms of how often you change your passwords, let's say there's 500 passwords in your database and maybe 7 of them are actual like important passwords for banking, for healthcare, for whatever. Those are the ones that, yeah, you should probably be changing them on a regular basis. The other 493, what difference does it make? I mean, you're not going to change them, especially since you don't even know what they are. If you've got a 16 or 32 or however many character password that's automatically generated, it just doesn't really matter in that case.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry, Eric, to be honest, because, I mean, we're all quite lucky we're on Linux, but if you're on Windows 10, Microsoft's got your information anyway, so don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings up another question. I don't, and I never have before, but since talking about Bitwarden this last week, I started to generate random passwords. Before this, I've had like passwords that I made up for each site. So I don't know how about you guys, but I've never before this week did the auto generator.
I use it all the time. Actually, but I use my own software to auto generate. Not my own software, company software. Something proprietary software. I don't know. It's not in our purview. We don't have access to the source code, so we can't get back how it generates. And I use that to SSH into every server, and it automatically changes all 60 or 65. I don't know how many servers I have to have daily access to. It changes all of them through a script, but yeah, every 30 days. It's quite a chore if it had to be done by hand on all 60 servers.
It's very, very interesting. It's a great topic, and I don't, I'm sure Rocco's probably been on this topic for long enough. But my only first experience and last experience with an external authenticator was years ago with Blizzard, and I purchased off them a little authenticator which randomly generated a secure code every time I wanted to log into the account, which was fantastic, brilliant, until the day I spilt a full cup of coffee over it. So I contacted Blizzard and said, hi, I had an authenticator on the account. I need to deactivate that to get back in because I've trashed it. Okay, fine. Send us a copy of your passport, your national insurance number, and your driving license. And I'm like, there's no way on this earth you're having a copy of that data. And they went, bye. And I've never logged into that account since to this day.
I had the same issue with EA, Activision. I had an Activision account and used Authy for it, and once I redid my phone, I never had them backed up, which I should have, but I didn't. And putting it back on the phone, obviously it's not there. You have to set it up, and you can't log in without it. So it's pretty much down the drain because they want too much information from me to, redo it.
Yeah. Totally agree with you, Rocco. So, it's like you say, it's about balance, isn't it? It's just about finding what works. And look, if KeyPass or, Bitwarden works for you, fine. I don't have a problem with that. All I'm saying is that if you take reasonable precautions in life, you then have to accept there's a point at which there's no point going beyond because you're never going to increase your security or anything else beyond that point.
Right. Well, and if I might add a little note to that issue you had with that key and then wanting so much information, most authentication or two-factor authentication give you a little list of master codes that they say print these because you won't see them again on the screen.
But who prints them, dude?
I save them in LastPass or Bitwarden now.
That's a good idea, but I didn't do that. So
right.
Yeah, well, I never had that option. But
the funny thing is, like when you created all those accounts, they didn't ask for any of that information when you created it.
Right.
So how are they going to verify it?
Great shout. Great shout.
Yeah.
That's what those one-time codes, one-time gen codes should be for.
Ironically, one-time gen code for my old LastPass authenticator that I had on my phone was stored in the same LastPass.
Oh, that's genius.
So I couldn't access it without actually sending them my own information. But thankfully, I had it all set up, so I just sent them my information. So I got access to every account possible because I had everything behind that and behind my authenticator.
Wow.
So I was, for 2 days after I got my new phone, I was basically just unlocking my systems and accounts.
What I'd like to know, maybe you can help with this, Rocco, maybe it's one for the American audience tonight, is if you were going to hack a big set of passwords, a long password, 30 characters, whatever, what would be the best GPU to do it? Would it be NVIDIA or would it be AMD?
It would obviously be NVIDIA.
30 character password, brute force. 30 character password, brute force, no way to happen because you would have to have a supercomputer with really high amount of Teslas because 30 characters with current character sets is such a big number that I believe it would take for I don't know which one. It would take like a couple of billion years to do. I don't know how many, but I know it's like, I believe it's 16 characters. It was on some really unsecure hash. It was like a couple of billion years. With MD5 for Titan Access.
Big Pod, do you want the shocking news? 38 seconds flat with a quantum computer, buddy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, quantum computers, but quantum computers aren't reality in most cases. Those things they call quantum computers, but they're not actually in a slightest bit what quantum computers, supposed quantum computers, are supposed to be. That actually deal with qubits, not bits.
Hey, do you think they'll have ray tracing?
Ray tracing is a gimmick that is useless in so many ways.
Qualify that statement. How is it useless? What's it do?
Ray tracing is just a computer, and with enough power, you can still do it. Problem catch is that they have NVIDIA has special chip that does just that. The problem is there is a really little amount of games that actually use it. So
yeah, there's only a couple, like Battlefield 5 will use it, but you have to have a really good, like a 2080 or something, in order for it to benefit you. Otherwise, your frame rates are going to be bad.
Yeah, and it is a change in look, but it's not like so drastic change that you would like go from I can't play it to now I can really play it with ray tracing. It's not like that. Been testing out some 2080s on Battlefield 5 at work.
So basically, it's kind of like the argument about how 4K was or 8K now, where it's like, oh, this is gonna be mainstream, but it's like there's stuff there to support the technology, but it will. Is that?
It's not there yet, dude. It's not there yet to be mainstream. You have to have the high-end cards in order for it to be worth anything.
Right.
Well, my sincere apologies, Rocco, but I have to leave, unfortunately. So may I just sincerely thank you for doing a European one. I've actually thoroughly enjoyed tonight's conversation. I hope the chat and everybody else has. Very interesting topics that very few people actually explore properly. And it's nice to have a great chat about it. So much love to each and every one of you. A massive thanks to Rocco for all his hard work and his effort. I still think best show on the planet, bar none, if you want your Linux fix. And have a great week. And hopefully I'll see you next week in the next biddle, which will be the American one. Fingers crossed.
See you, EB.
Thanks, EB.
All right.
ECB.
Good night, John.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody got anything before we move off of the password manager type?
So one thing that really stands out to me are these dinosaur websites that will only allow you to use like 4 special characters. It really gets really annoying when you're trying to generate a password and you want to include special characters. And it's like, well, you could use this one, this one, this one, or this one. And I really wish they would add some kind of blacklist or whitelist or something into that just for these
Yep.
dinosaurs. I also wish the dinosaurs would update themselves because it's getting a little ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, but funny you bring that up because there are financial institutions that only offer 8 to 12 character password limit.
I know.
Yeah.
America
I mean, that is to me ridiculous that you're talking about this is where your money is stored and you're only allowing me a 12 character password. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
I think anyone here that's an admin understands that some of these systems that are in use, especially in government, finance, medical fields, some of that stuff is ancient.
Yeah.
Some of the
Because of
software-
compliance.
especially probably financial institutions too. They probably don't move, off the systems they're on real fast
until the break.
Yeah.
And even then, they would rather fix them than actually replace them. Like I remember my professor once talking about that when he was still working in a company, they got paid, I believe, $1,000 per hour to fix a motherboard, and it was a motherboard that I don't know, all capacitors broke, and basically the system was so overloaded, so problematic, all capacitors have broken, and they had to replace every single one of them, and they charged, I believe, $1,000 per hour to replace on a board that was like so outdated it was scary. It was at the time 15 years old.
Sony was they knew about how weak their system was, but they found out how much it cost to update it, and they made the decision that it just wasn't worth the investment. And of course, it was a bad decision at the time, after they got hacked. But the cost of updating these huge systems sometimes are just too much for them to handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when you talk about mixing systems. So now you've got federation and, authorization that has to pass between different systems. And, you might have an old system that if you try to update it, there are so many logistical problems with trying to keep current with just running updates, let alone updating technology. So when you run into websites like that, should they? Of course. Can they easily? Probably not, which is why they haven't done it. In a lot of cases, I've found in my experience that it's not because people are being lazy, it's because there's really a hard problem that they can't solve, or at least solve cheaply or easily, or get buy-in from their, being a ex-product manager, I can tell you getting buy-in for technical debt is next to impossible, because it doesn't make any money.
Well, John, you brought up a point in chat about the weak link. And I want to ask you, where do you think it comes down to? Is it the IT admins? Is it the management, lack of money? Is it the company itself? Why are these companies not investing in updating?
Well, because almost 100% of the time, unless your company is providing IT services, IT is always a cost center. It never generates money for the company. You have to train these people. You have to keep them up to date. But they're always a cost center. And those are always the areas that get cut first. I mean, almost exclusively. Boom.
Yeah.
Well, I'll agree with that.
I don't know if I work in IT as well. A little bit different, but I have seen a presentation where they're talking about how they're getting into a machine, and they're doing it live on the screen, where they're talking about they have a target Windows computer. I don't know what the other computer would use. I imagine it would be something like Kali or something like that. But they talk about how they can get in with somebody maybe that has maybe that's looking for like an Excel spreadsheet for a quote on them looking to buy something. Maybe they're talking to a salesperson there or something like that. So I mean, I still think it's the end user at the end of the day, whether it be somebody not paying attention and going to a website and entering their password, for something, or just not paying attention on a social engineering call.
Yeah.
Like that.
Basically, as far as I see where I work, like our outside customers, most of the time it's the problem is with phishing and emails. Basically, a lot of the times we have to clean up what came from an email. and that's actually how most infiltrations come in, with the what is called like a Word document with a macro that downloads a executable from the web that then infiltrates the whole network, or like Excel spreadsheet with a macro and stuff like that. Basically a lot of things come from what they think are trusted sources, like for example co-workers. In reality it comes from somewhere like Siberia.
Right, and once they're in, it's really difficult to find them, because I mean, at
Yeah.
that point, you're almost screwed.
I believe one time we were on a work site for like a week trying to find a virus that was like in every system, but a final version was like somewhere like the first version, the first patient. We had to find that because it was constantly replicating. We cleaned it up, and it was in less than a couple of seconds it was already infected, and all of that was happening from first patient, which was actually an old server that was almost already inactive. It was just connected to the internet because an admin had used that server for himself.
Yeah.
Well, security is sometimes among admins even worse than among normal people.
Well, because they have access that normal people don't have.
Yeah,
they can do way more damage.
Yeah,
and they think they're impenetrable because they are admins. They can do whatever, and who will do something to me? I know what I'm doing. In reality, they don't know what they're doing.
It's complacency, isn't it?
Yeah, and honestly, as an admin, I find myself more nervous because I don't want any of those things to get out ever.
Well, and see, and my previous job was I ended up working with doing help desk stuff for people, and ultimately I was remoting into computers that could have potentially very confidential information on them. So like we couldn't have our phones on us in the area.
Right.
The area was locked. You had to badge in, even if you were just lining up after lunch. You had to badge in. You couldn't leave your computer unlocked when you left it. Like if you did that consistently, it was a fireable offense. So I kind of mess with people at work now, because if I see their computer unlocked, I'm like, man, you're about to send an email telling somebody you quit. Better be careful.
I actually get really mad when I go on a work site and I see computers unlocked. I actually go mad with the IT personnel. How they allow that.
I'm right there with you.
Because in 1 week we get a call about security problem from the same company. Normally it's like stuff like that.
We've had with the new stuff in the UK about GDPR. I'm a teacher, and you'll be in your class and you're teaching usually from a laptop, projector screen things. You walk around to see someone, but you have to always keep an eye on your laptop. You can't lock the laptop because then you can't see what the lesson is. But you've got to make sure if people are moving around, because I'm a science teacher, people are moving around a lot, and you've got to make sure that there's nothing there that you're constantly checking that no one's looking at what's on your screen in case you've got anything else up with pupils' information on or things like that. You've just got to be constantly vigilant, and then as soon as you're back to it and you're going to be away from it for a while, it's you've got to lock it immediately, or it's a major problem that we and there'll be teachers that leave classrooms, and I've seen them, and you just don't think about it. You're logged on writing a report for somebody, and if anyone walks in while you've gone to the loo, you can get hold of anything.
My professors always carry 2 laptops. One of them is for lesson, one of them is for data on pupils and stuff like that. And I remember one time I actually hit a professor on the way to the loo, and he had that laptop. Basically, he was clutching it like that to himself to not lose it when he walks, because he's so security conscious. It's an IT school, so that's a bit more secure. But yeah, and I know that school I go to most of the time now has like security on lockdown, mostly because I told them how they must do it. I fixed computers on the same school I go to.
Yeah, I think being self-aware is a good first step.
Yep.
True.
All right. There's one thing that I've wanted to do on the regular Fiddle, and that is to get to talk to each one of you guys for where you started with Linux. I have never gotten there yet because we're always talking about something. But for this one, I would like to get some of the Europe guys' backstories on how you started with Linux. So, Army, can you start it out?
Yeah, I was. I got. I think it was one of the PC magazines. It wasn't a Linux magazine, and in it, on the cover disc, it said, "Oh, do you want to try an alternate operating system? Try this one. It's called Ubuntu, and it was 606 Dapper Drake, so a long time ago." And I put it on. It was very orange and very grey, very gnome 2, and what I was trying to get used to it, and it took forever to get the wireless drivers to work, and
Well, let me ask you a question. You had that magazine, but was there anything that sparked your interest before that? I mean, you had to be somewhat technical in order for even to think about trying it.
Oh yeah, I've built computers since I was at school for fun, and I've never bought a computer. I've always sort of built things and put things together computer wise, and I was just reading this magazine. Oh yeah, I'll try it, and I gave it a go. And as to what sparked it, what made me want to try it, have you not used Windows ever? I was like, I'm gonna have to try it. It can't be. And no, I couldn't get the Windows wireless drivers working, and lots of other bits and bobs, and lots of strange things. But I still wanted to stick with it because it was. I quite enjoyed it. But I have a wife, and I wasn't on it for. I think we were tried it. I think I got to Edge, and I think by the time F was coming out, I was pretty much told that it was coming off. And then I forget when we went back into it. I think it was maybe it was 1404 or 1310, something like that. And after Unity had come out, and was trying different desktops. And since then, there's no Windows in the house, apart from my school laptop.
So does your wife use your computers, or does she have her own?
God, I'm a school teacher. How much money do you think we've got? We've got. See, we share the computers, so we've got, and she usually uses the laptop. But they're both at the moment they're both running MX. I've decided to give that a go. But yeah, she says to me, as long as when I distro hop, which I don't like doing that often. I try and stay. I was on Solus for about 6-7 months, but as long as when I move, she doesn't care. She doesn't want to know about it. As long as her desktop looks exactly the same as it did when I left. So I spent a long time getting MX to look exactly like Budgie did. It didn't take that long, but it was harder when I went from GNOME to an XFC one, because trying to get that bloody clock into the middle of the top bar I just gave up eventually. Yeah, she's happy. I think I walked in once and she was having a conversation with someone. They'd bought a new laptop. She was showing them how it worked, and they were having problems with the internet. And it was when Windows 8 had come out, and they were using the awful thing. They were having trouble closing the internet, and you have to like swipe down from the top to get the bar to show. And I walked in and I heard my wife just go, "Oh my God, why can't everyone just use bloody Linux?" I love you. Yeah. And I've tried. My dad's used it for quite a while. He likes it. He likes the fact that he can't. He's not got any malware and stuff that's running on his system. None that he's noticed. No viruses. No slowdown. So yeah, we've just been on it since then. And if I could use it for work, it would be great. But the British schools are massively sort of honed into the Microsoft services, the whole OneDrive thing. You get a terabyte of storage each per member of staff, and I've been trying. I had everything sort of synced to Google, and I've just moved jobs, and they don't use Google at all. So trying to get everything uploaded onto OneDrive is a nightmare because the Windows client just sucks. But I did find a client recently called what's it called? I think OneDrive Free. I'll put a link in the chat to it, and it works in the command line, but it's absolutely brilliant. And you can leave it running and upload stuff, and it's just testament to how it's built by Microsoft for their operating system, and someone on GitHub has made it work 100 times better, because on the Microsoft one, after 40 minutes, it logs you out and it stops uploading. This I've left on overnight and uploaded 10 gigabytes of stuff. And it's things like that that just make me think, yeah, I'm going to have to stay with this. It's brilliant.
So you don't have any Windows computers in the house?
No, which is really annoying when I have to, it took me ages I lost one of my little USB keys for my Logitech keyboard, and this was before there was like a Linux thing, and oh my god, what a nightmare trying to get a new one of those synced up to the keyboard. Yeah. I've done it in virtual machines because there's some software that at school that I've had to use, and I've got away with virtual machines, but then there's one Windows drive in this machine. It's not actually, I don't think the power lead's not even plugged into the drive at the moment, but on the very few occasions that I have to power it up to use something. But I think the last time I powered it up, it said that I hadn't logged in since 2016, which made me quite happy.
Nice.
So I had one question for Army real quick, because I always love the challenge of, can you get Linux running? I understand you're using OneDrive and Microsoft products, but they're now starting to appear some Linux options for OneDrive. There's actually a new one, and I'm looking for it right now. I can't find the name of it. But besides OneDrive, is there anything that you'd say is holding you back from using Linux at work?
Yeah, well, I've bought Crossover, but I usually just use my school laptop, because the school I'm at now, they've massively locked down the laptop. You can't do anything if you. Okay. It's Windows. What is it? Luckily, it's Windows 7 and not Windows 10, because my old job upgraded to 10, and it was just awful because they stripped out everything, but it just didn't work properly. Whereas this one, you can't add anything to the bottom bar. You can't, if you right click any of your open windows, it doesn't come up with the list. When you click on the Windows Start launcher and you try to search for an app, it doesn't come up with anything, even though they're all there, because they've locked it down so much. So I want to really use my home computer, but I found that trying to run Office, it does work, because you get free copies, you get free installs of Office if your school has an Office account, and it does work, but it's just tiny little paper cuts. Like typing now is fine, but when you click on anything on the Office toolbar, it's just maybe a second before the toolbar changes, and it's just enough to rub me the wrong way. And I'd love to use LibreOffice, or I'd love to use like even WPS Office, but things just never ever ever open the way they should, and they have to be in docx files, because we have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of teaching files that we pay for every year, and they just don't open right. And I can edit them at home. When I try and print them at school, they're awful, and I can't give those to pupils. So that is a bit of a pain.
Have you tried the web version of the Microsoft?
Oh yeah, I'd rather slip my wrist. It's just so bad. It's so cut down, because I was using, for some of the stuff, because I was managing part of the department for a little while, and or help managing, and I was doing all the data analysis. So I had these huge spreadsheets that I'd written with loads of really complicated formulas in that taken forever to write, and I tried to load them on the web version, and when you clicked on, I just want you to do that, you can't even sort by if you click on sort, you can either do it alphabetically reverse or alphabetically. You can't choose a column to sort it by, or you can't even get that option. Like, this is supposed to be like the good version. It was so slow as well. Gotcha. So what I tend to do is I bring my my work laptop home. I do my teaching stuff on there, and then everything else, absolutely everything else, is done on Linux.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
I think it's
one thing that I would like to get working on Linux, and I've tried for the past few weeks. I know we've talked about gaming before. I don't have a very good gaming machine. I mean, my computer is nearly 10 years old now, and it works absolutely fine. NVIDIA graphics card, but I don't need it to game. But I bought an NVIDIA Shield, and I was playing games on that, and you can play games on that full quality, and you know, it's an Android box. But they've brought out a desktop file that you can install, and you can then get to all of your games library, but it can include your Steam library, and you can play all of your games in full graphic using their servers with all their 1080s, 20 whatevers, and it's amazing. But no one can figure out how to get it to install in Linux. And when you read the blurb, I tried to get it installed in VirtualBox, and they said, oh, it won't work because you need a graphics card that's capable of running an H.264 or H.265 video, which shouldn't be hard for Linux to do. And there's a huge petition to try and bring this over to Linux. Loads of people want it because you wouldn't have to rely on your hardware. It's using their hardware to play all the latest games through Steam, which I think is amazing. The only thing that's not working is the installer. They can't get the installer to it. It's the old. I don't know if anyone tried to use Photoshop when Photoshop CS5 came out before, and on Linux you were stuck with CS1 if you'd bought that, or whatever you had to use the older versions because they couldn't get the installer, whatever files are in it, to actually run. And that's the reason that I had to boot into Windows recently to see if it would work on there. And it's absolutely fantastic. There's barely any lag. I was playing the latest stuff, and it's amazing. And if they can figure out how to get, I don't care if it's in Wine, crossover, whatever, if they can figure out a way of porting it or getting it natively on there, if it's just a video stream and then inputs that are sent to their server, it's amazing. They can get it to work on an Android box. So why it won't work on Linux, I don't know. But when it does, I think that would be huge.
Yep. Absolutely. But you also have to have a good internet connection with that as well, right?
They say that you need to have between a minimum of 18 meg down, and then whatever it's usually about half that up. Here I think I've got 80 down, but not that up. But the bottleneck is the contact to the server, and the servers, there's not that many. But I haven't found a big problem. When I've read things online, that there have been issues with it, but it's never got to their maximum upload speed. It's been issues with the server at that time, but I haven't experienced any of those. And I've tried it on slightly slower connections and haven't experienced any either. I know Martin Wimpress has talked about before about using the Shield box to get things working, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I should really take it to a couple of other friends' houses that don't have as fast internet and try it there and see if it's as good. But you're not really having to send that much out. So your uploads, not that, it's just controller inputs that you're sending out. So it's your down really, and that's your video. And if you're sending video, it's going to be I don't think it goes up to 4K. But even so, you can stream Netflix in 4K with a decent download speed. So I don't see why it would be as big a problem.
Well, there was one caveat to that. I mean, you may have the speed, but I know when I've tried stuff like that on my internet connection is just simply not stable enough. It just, I think there used to be a site called pingtest.net instead of speedtest.net. And like there was a term there that I always called jitter, which made a lot of sense to me. The jitter would be too high. Like your pings would be too inconsistent for it to cooperate.
They do a test as soon as you try and log in, and they do a network test, and the jitter, it comes up with the jitter thing, and mine was really low. From what I hear, I mean, I've not been to America, but I hear that the internet services there don't seem to be as helpful.
Yeah, you're right.
Good. I mean, ours were like that for a long time, but when you're trying to roll out new internet to a small country like the UK, it's a lot easier than trying to roll it out for several 100 million people. So we've kind of got it faster. I think our fastest download at the moment is maybe 100, but that's fiber optic, but also very, very stable connection. Whereas over there, and we were quite slow to do that, because in the East, it's, you know, there's countries that plow billions of dollars into making sure that they've got the fastest internet in the world all the time. But then their government, that money's taken from something else. And, you know, we look down on those countries sometimes because they're not providing other needs, yet they've got really good internet. And there's, you know, other countries that are spending money on much needed other things and not the internet. So I can understand why they haven't done it so much. But from what I hear when people are complaining in the US, I do feel sorry for them quite a bit sometimes, because it seems like there's not much of a choice out there. I don't know if that's true, but in the UK we've got quite a few providers, and we've only got one provider that provides the actual line, but the line quality is really, really good.
I have two choices in my area. One is Comcast, and that's with who I'm with, because it is a 1 gig connection, but it isn't as stable as it should be. And then the other one would be...
How much do you pay for 1 gig?
Well, I guess it's over $100 a month.
It's a lot of money.
Yep.
See, over here we pay. I mean, I pay about, including the telephone, which they always count as being about £18.
Yeah, it's a bundle or whatever.
Yeah, it's about £25. So you pay about £7 extra for fibre.
And what's your speed? What speed do you get?
80/20.
Here is about 40, I think it is.
Okay.
So I get 80 down, and I think I get about 25 up, 25 or 30 up, and I pay, not including the phone, £11 a month. But that's on a deal. But that's when that closes. It's about £18 a month. That's unlimited downloads, but and that's really good. That's a really good price, but it used to be horrendous. I've just put in on a different screen how many providers. I don't live in a very big. I live, as I said, I live in the north of the country, and in quite a small city. It is a city, but it's more like a small town. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10 different providers that I could choose from, which seems, and it seems that when you're in such a massive country like the US, you would imagine that they'd have more choice.
No.
So the thing here is that it's the last mile, and it's the local, or it's the companies like Comcast, Verizon, Frontier, AT&T. They pay and maintain that last mile, and so they essentially create monopolies because they work with the local governments. And if you're lucky, you have 2 choices, and most people don't have, like, so if you live in a multi-unit community, like you're in a condo or an apartment building, you have no choice. You have whatever the building has, and that's it. Comcast, I've used them in the past, and they're just unreliable. They go down, they don't tell you why, they don't tell you when it's going to come back up, they don't prorate your rates, they don't get the speed, you don't get the speeds that they guarantee. So at least I'm on fiber. I'm on a 50 by 50 synchronous connection, and I pay $89 a month for that, which is
and who's the provider?
Well, it was Verizon, but Frontier bought out all of Verizon's holdings in Florida, so now it's Frontier.
We have Frontier around here, actually. That's one of the other choice.
It's rock solid. It never goes down. And I know saying that, it's probably I'll drop off the connection. But seriously, it never goes down, and it's amazing. It's, you know, fiber is really wonderful if you can get it.
I pay, like, we pay at home something like €65 a month, but we have 2 TVs, IPTVs, phone number, 50/25 connection, and 2 mobile phones are on the same bill. Wow. So that's for €65.
That's amazing. Holy cow.
So I was really impressed. I was looking into like hosting websites and things like that, and I thought, oh, it would be really handy to have a static IP. But everyone says, oh God, you know, they're going to be ridiculously expensive. So I had to look at how much my provider would charge me, and it's a one-off fee of £2.
I don't have a fee, actually. If I just need to file the right documents, and I get it right away. Also, I have a to-home fiber, which was set up for free last year. Basically, they came to home they asked us if we want fiber, and the dad just had to sign it, and in a couple of weeks we had fiber. No pay anything.
The other thing to mention,
And we have like 4 providers that are whole country. They hold the whole country. They're not just in one area, one provider, but basically all of them have whole country because we're so small.
Which country are you?
It's Slovenia. It's small.
Oh, Slovenia. Oh.
2 million people. We're small. We can have 4 providers for the whole country.
What were you going to say, Silent?
well, we have the illusion of many providers here because ultimately it probably boils down to like 3 main providers. So at some point they will be using another provider's lines, which are then ultimately controlled by BT, who have the monopoly on all of the lines. And so even our fiber isn't true fiber. It's fiber to the cabinet. It's not fiber to the home, which is why we're restricted to 80/20, 80 down, 20 up.
I actually have fiber to the home, but that's like the 50/20 is like the lowest tier that is like basically free, no additional pay for speed, because I don't need any upload or download, additional upload or download speed. Otherwise, I would actually get more.
Well, for example, the company I'm with at the moment, I got a really good deal with them. But when the engineer was here testing the equipment, I could see the line identification was still attached to the previous company I was with. So the company I'm with now is utilizing the old company's lines that I was with.
Yep.
Yeah.
I find it very weird because that's the same for me. I'm with PlusNet, and they use, like you say, they use BT Open World for their lines, but their pricing is half what BT could offer me themselves, which is just ridiculous when you think they're paying BT. But I would say when you said they're controlled ultimately by BT, I think I don't know about
of the lines.
Yeah, but I don't know if I know it used to be this, but when NTL were around and Virgin bought them out and things like that, I don't know if Virgin use the BT line or if they use their own line.
They're cable to the house.
Yeah, and then I used to live in a city in the UK called Hull, and Hull have this really strange thing where they're probably the only city in the entire UK that don't have BT. They have a completely different company that only does that city and the surrounding area. And when I lived there and I wanted the internet, I could only go with their provider, and that was it. There was no choice. It was just it's called Kingston Communications, and you could only go with them. And it was comparable in price, but not in what you got. They said it was, but you never got the same kind of thing because you didn't get the competition that you got. It might be true that it boils down in the end to pretty much BT, but the fact that all these other companies are wanting to make a living, you get more competition than what I imagine you're going to get in the US with maybe 2 providers.
So I'll throw this out here just to be an idiot. 5G is going to fix all of this, right?
No, it won't. The problem is that they'll have to deploy it, and especially in America, that won't happen. Even here, I'm going to be lucky to have 5G in like a couple of years after it will be released. Even though I have a national provider that's basically owned by government and has first access to the technology, but I'm in such a remote area of the country that I just want it because I'm in a countryside. Cities, they'll get it like in weeks, years.
Yeah, so
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say about broadband had been not available in pockets of the country, especially remote or rural areas, and that was a problem for a lot of people. So I worked in healthcare, and we did medical transcription. We had remote workforce, and it precluded a lot of people from actually doing that work that could have done the work if they had access to broadband. And so the government has proposed this idea of broadband for all, but what they consider broadband, so they consider satellite broadband. That's not broadband. DSL technically is broadband, but still very slow, very prone to any kind of weather problems like that. So, to Big Pod's point, if you're in a rural area, none of those technologies are really going to help you unless they can lay cable and get to you.
we had a push here. I think it was for 4G, but I might be wrong. That before it got into the big cities, there was a big thing. It was all over the news because they were pushing it to areas that they just couldn't lay cable to. So they were saying, well, you know, and everyone was saying, well, Edge is so slow and 3G so slow. But quite a few of the rural areas, especially where I live, had really good 4G, absolutely awful broadband, but really good 4G. And they kind of, I'm sure that, especially in the north of the country, they were pushing it into these rural areas first and doing all the beta testing there first, so that they were like able to actually join the rest of the country in the internet movement. And then I wonder if they would do that with 5G as well, or if it's just going to, now that everyone's got fairly decent coverage.
Well, there was a company called Nortel, and they were doing experiments with using the electricity supply to supply broadband.
Oh, yeah.
They were using
broadband over power line.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely amazing. It was like 100 meg down and up, just using the supply itself, which was...
They've done some of that
Yeah.
here too.
Basically, power cables have like 95% of them is basically free. So technically you could send data over, but because it's power, it could be sometimes a bit edgy on and problematic when it's like high draw time, like on noon and at night when people like to watch things.
Well, we kind of got off the subject a little bit, but
wanted to point it out, but
that's perfectly fine. Charlie, how did you get into Linux?
Well, I don't work in tech, and I work in a job where I'm away from tech for long periods of time, so in tourism. But I remember when we used to have shops, well, they still have them now, PC World over here, which was for me like Aladdin's cave. You could just go in and buy things off the shelf and have them straight away. But one day I was in the shop and I saw this Red Hat Linux, and I was so amazed. I thought, wow, I can try something different. Took it home and tried to install it, and of course it had no drivers for there wasn't any internet in those days, so it didn't have any drivers for the Wi-Fi or anything like that. So I was totally disgusted. I couldn't believe how they could sell such rubbish, because the drivers weren't there, it didn't work out of the box. So I just threw it in the bin. And then, like, in getting a magazine, there was this CD on the front, and I thought I'd give it a try again. This was Ubuntu, and by that time it had advanced enough to have the drivers for so many more laptops, and I think it was a desktop at the time. So I just played around with it, but I only sort of hovered on the outskirts, and the more I sort of stepped into Linux, I found, people were all just at such a high level that I felt so overwhelmed and unwelcomed at that time. It's, if you asked a simple question, people just brushed you off, and they didn't have the time to answer simple questions. Of course, the internet wasn't the same as it was today. So, but slowly I just stumbled along until about the year 2000. And then I moved to another country, into South Africa. And there everybody was just using Mac. So I stayed away for quite some time, but just tried to stay with Linux. But my friends, I've got no technical friends. This is like the biggest group of technical people I've had together in one place, I think, in my whole life. Every time I try and talk, I'm like this friend, this boring friend who tries to talk tech and nobody's interested. So I try to, if I even hear somebody mention their slight interest in tech, I grip them and hold them. And so it gets so bad that people, they see me coming and they would just do a runner as fast as possible, thinking, my God, there's that weird techie guy who just wants to talk tech. So I really got upset, and I had nobody to talk to. So I basically left about 5 years and started on Mac. For my shame, I was tempted into the walled garden by the forbidden fruit, and I spent 5 years there, and I would have stayed there, but just recently, about 3 months ago, I was updating my laptop, which is 2011. It's meant to be all free updates now with Mac, and I was updating. It said your Mac cannot be updated. you need to go and buy some new electronics. And I thought, my God, I paid £2,000 for this thing. You know, I mean, it should be updating forever at that price.
Yep.
So I got very upset, and that was the sort of, I like to think of it as the moment I broke the brainwashing. So I mean, I do, the Mac has its place, you know, but not for me now. And so I went back and I went on eBay and looked for a good computer. I asked a few people what was a good one, and I bought for £200 an X1 Carbon, which is the most amazing laptop I've ever had, for £200. That's about $220. And it's running Ubuntu by itself, which normally is stuttery and a bit heavy, runs like an absolute charm. And for the last 3 months, I have been distro hopping, which was a bit of a problem because I don't work for long periods of time. And I was literally getting no sleep because I would wake up in the middle of the night and have to jump onto another distro. It was becoming really, I was losing my mind.
There's a hotline for that. You know, we have a hotline for that.
I really need one. I was in such a state, you know, I would literally have bags under my eyes here. And I was like, I think KDE's it. I've got to go. No. And then I would be like, oh, no. I really like, and I was, it was a mess. So after about 2 weeks of that, you know, and taking a few tablets and calming down, then I settled with Ubuntu. And now I'm really enjoying it because the community now is so much more open, much, you know, like now me, I mean, you don't know who I am. I mean, I could be
so you're an Arch fan now, huh?
I have installed Arch, you know, but I like things a little bit easier. I'm starting slowly to get back into it again, but I never dived in so deeply. I mean,
installing it's the first step.
Yes, right. I work on. I mean, I had to go at your distro, which was quite amazing because it's so easy after trying to install Arch, which is mamma mia. You know, you've got the whole instruction manual. It's like putting together a car. You know, that's always been my problem. You know, I like just get in the car and drive. I think of myself, I'm not the mechanic, I'm the driver, you know. So, so I'm here now and I'm just really feeling great to be back in. I'm learning a lot.
Cool, me too, yeah.
Following courses and, you know, it's just, I can't believe it. You know, I can't believe I spent so long away from it. But it's good. I think it's a good time. Everything happens for a reason. So I was away for a long period of time, and just this whole community, even with YouTube, you know, just being able to comment on people's videos and everything, and it's just it's good to be back.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
To see, to me, that's the proof of the improvement of desktop Linux over time, right? The joke's always this is the year of the desktop Linux, but it really has gotten so good with driver support, with I mean, just about any system you can imagine, you can pop, you know, any Linux distribution with a modern kernel in it, and very few people are going to have a problem now.
It's just so stable, you know. Before, and the one thing that irritated me, you're busy with something, and boom, it's just disappeared. You know, you're like all hours of work just gone, you know. And so that's why all these little things made me move to the walled garden. But now it just works. It's incredible.
Go ahead, Andy.
The irony that I find now is that it seems like Windows with each update gets worse, and Linux with each update just continues to improve. And you know, someone like you, I completely agree with that. Trying Linux 20 years ago compared to trying it today they aren't even necessarily the same thing. So to hear you having a good experience coming, especially from a Mac, because a Mac, people use a Mac because of, like you said, they want to get in the car and drive. They don't want to check the oil. They don't want to kick the tires. They want to get in and turn the key and go. And that's what Mac is to computers. And for someone that was with that for 5 years to come and then use Ubuntu and have a positive experience, I love hearing that. That's wonderful.
It's been fantastic, yeah.
Well, okay, so you said you're running a Ubuntu proper with GNOME. Is that what you're running?
Yeah, that's it. Just Ubuntu, or whatever it says there now. That's what I really, the big problem I find with Linux, there's still a problem with Linux, and that is that you don't have Microsoft Word on it. Until that day, you get Microsoft Word and some of the bigger programs. I think that Linux will never have its day as the desktop. I mean,
have you tried using the crossover demo with Microsoft Word? Because when I tried it, I know I said before about there is a slight delay with the UI sometimes, but it is amazing. The work they have done with that to get it installed is just brilliant.
Have you heard of crossover, Charlie?
I've heard of crossover.
Okay.
I've tried it. I tried the trial, and
yeah, the trial, because I tried it last year. It wouldn't work with the new version, and then this year, I was so impressed that I bought it because it does work, and my printer works and everything. I've had problems with that in Wine before, and I thought, well, yeah, that is good. And I know my dad is still, he's a big he likes Office 2007 because he knows where everything is in it, but it's still with the ribbon, and he's got it on a disc, and he refuses to buy another one because he's bought this one, and it works flawlessly in crossover, but also in Wine and Play on Linux. It just works. So
for me, I'm happy with LibreOffice. I mean, that's okay. I mean, I even, my work wanted me to do something. I said, look, I don't have it at home here. I don't have Word. I said, I've only got LibreOffice. And I sent all my papers through in LibreOffice, and they said it was great. They said there was no problem with it, because I don't have any extra. But I think just the first thing people ask about if they're going to change to another product is, can it take my software? Can I install, or is there an equivalent? And Word is so entrenched in every business. Unless you've got that, then people won't even look twice. I think that's why it sticks at such a low amount. Nobody goes to school to learn, or very few people go to learn Caden Live. They're all learning these big products. So, I mean, once those come, and maybe with snaps or flat packs, maybe they will start to invest some time where these things will come onto Linux. And I think that's the day when they get these big names on here for however they do it, then Linux will just blow up. That will be the moment it will.
Well, we have Calculator now from Microsoft, so
yes. Well, it's a start,
They've embraced open source. So.
I mean, they have. I mean, it's they've don't they own GitHub now? I think they own.
All right. I would love to continue the conversation, but we are out of time. All right. I appreciate every one of you joining today. So everybody gets a last word. John, last word.
This has been great. I appreciate everything that you do. Hope to make more.
Hope to see you in more, John. Army, last word.
Yeah, I've been a really good night. I'm glad that you're doing this every month now, so that we all get a chance to join in, because current time's 10 o'clock at night rather than about 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's very nice.
Awesome. Vash.
Linux. Oh, wait. You don't mean literal word.
No.
I will hopefully be on tonight. We will see. Work is playing around with the go live schedule. So, but anyway, as usual, always thanks again for having the stream.
Awesome. Charlie, last word.
Yeah, this is great. It's great. I hope next time I can get internet. Next time you're live, I can get internet connection. I doubt it. I'll be floating around somewhere on the Rhine. But yeah, it's been great to be here and have a conversation.
Well, if you ever have one of them nights again on a Saturday night where you can't sleep, you can always join the regular Biddle time, and we'll have that later at 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you're still awake later, you can join us.
Maybe, yeah.
I might be able to talk you down from distro hopping.
Right. All right, Frank, last word, brother.
Thank you, Rocco. This was really cool to learn a little bit about the local internet that everybody has in a couple of I think we had Slovenia with, and the UK in general. That was a really good learning experience. I want to just touch one thing real quick. I missed last week with Silent, and I just wanted to tell him that he has done great, great things with Arch. It is incredible. A beautiful, beautiful operating system, and thank you for putting that out there.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that.
Totally agree. Paul, last word.
I'd save the Queen.
I love it.
You have to have your hand here.
Perfect.
And the national anthem. If you could sing that, that'd be great.
I love it. Big Pod, last word.
Thanks for having this Europe edition, Rocca. And this was quite a topical episode, if you ask me. So for some it might be good, for some it might be bad. But again, thank you.
Yep. Eric, last word.
Thanks for putting this on as always. I can never get enough of this. It's funny that Charlie mentioned, you know, the idea of, oh, someone said something about technology, because over the years every time someone asks me, oh, what do you do? And I'll start telling them about being in IT, and you can just see them trail away.
Yep.
And
the eyes glaze over, and
yeah, exactly. So you know, what is so commonplace to us is just completely out of the ordinary for them. So to have this ability to come here and talk to you guys is really very important to me, and I enjoy it immensely. So thank you, and thanks to everybody for coming and sharing.
Awesome. Dan, my man, what's going on?
Hey, thanks for putting this on. Really enjoyed it. I love listening and following along with the European folks, and it's always very enlightening. So I enjoyed. Thanks.
Silent, last word.
Thank you so much for putting the European version on. My body clock thanks you.
All right. Well, then
we'll get some decent sleep. So yeah.
Well, I take it that means we won't see you later, huh?
I may try, actually. I've got the day off tomorrow, so I may pop in.
Okay. All right. So the next BDLL Europe edition will be April 13th, Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to mark your calendars now for that. Thank you, Dan, for helping me out with this. And thank you all for showing up. Long live Linux.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.